Good day, everyone. This is Bob Roswick with the Bismarck Air Museum, and with me today is Tom Trousdale, our docent, and we're going to talk about Boeing 247s. We're kind of heading back. Our previous episodes, we talked about DC-3s, DC-4s. We're going back to the airplanes that predated these aircraft, and so what we're going to talk about today is the 247. How you doing today, Tom?
I'm doing good, Bob.
What do we got on the picture here?
We have a Boeing 247 taxiing in, and this is the grandfather of all modern aircraft. It was the first modern aircraft that was built and designed, the first all-metal aircraft after the Ford Trimotor. The story on this is after Knut Rockne was killed in the Fokker wooden wonder that crashed in Wichita or around Wichita, Kansas, all airlines wanted metal aircraft, and for safety reasons, of course, because it was later determined that the cause of the Rockne crash was dry rot on wood, because the Fokker was built out of wood. So the 247 was developed by the Boeing company. It had controllable speed props. In other words, they changed the angle to take a little pitch or a big pitch. It has retractable landing gear. It is all metal. And it had flaps, which are used to land and take off. It was a wonder for its day. And airlines flocked to Boeing. The only trouble was Boeing and United Aircraft were joined or owned by the same consortium. And Boeing took the order from United Airlines, and United ordered 60 of them. And American Airlines couldn't order any, and TWA couldn't order any. Of course, they could after if they waited for 60 aircraft to be built, but the assembly rate was 2 aircraft probably a month. So you were looking at a year or two to get better, more economical and more safer air transportation. So United Airlines had a lockup on it, and we'll talk about how the DC-3 came to be. It basically came to be because the airlines couldn't get any other aircraft other than the Boeing 247, and that was locked up. So it was a wonder of its day, but the drawback was, because it was so good, only one airline was going to get it for a couple of years.
I like this picture because it looks like Bismarck, but it's actually Vancouver. And the reason I picked this picture because it kind of looks like it might have looked when it came into Bismarck. But these did not serve the Bismarck area. Where was the nearest place that had the 247 in service?
247 in service was at Rapid City on an airline called Inland Airlines, which later became Western Airlines, and Billings. They landed in Billings also on Inland, but unfortunately none came into Bismarck on a scheduled basis. They probably came here on maybe a charter or something for United, but on a scheduled basis where it would land every day, no, there was no 247s into Bismarck.
All right, so this is kind of a head-on picture. Let's go ahead and look at this picture. Another picture looks very much like it's in Bismarck, although I see some mountains in the background, so it's not. What can you tell us about this photo in regards to the aircraft, Tom?
Well, 2 things. You notice United Airlines, and United Airlines adopted their slogan. Let's put the little arrow on the United Airlines U.S. map there, right in on the map, Bob. There you go. They called it the mainline airway, and you can see it's basically a straight line going across the transcontinental United States and then a dog leg going up to Seattle, because, again, United and Boeing were controlled by the same company. The other interesting thing, let's go up to the cockpit, Bob. Right, front window. There was a problem that Inland Airlines brought to Boeing's attention, and they said, and of course United brought the same problem. They said, you've got to get rid of that window like that, because when they flew in snow and icing conditions, the window isn't streamlined. You notice it's tilted inward, and because it was tilted inward, you had your own little snowdrift that formed in front of the pilots, and it wasn't too good. So this is a real early 247, because after this, within about a year after they started flying, all Boeing 247s came out with the windows going forward so that the snow would go off and not build in front of the window.
I always find this interesting because initially, when the big aircraft were starting to be developed after World War I, most of them were open cockpit, and so they did have a little bit of glass in front of the pilot, but they're completely open, so you could reach over and move out any debris. And this is the old ship window, I call it. You lean it forward so that the rain doesn't fall on it. Well, these airplanes, the rain doesn't fall on them; it just smacks straight away.
Yes, and the snow would build up there like you wouldn't believe. The only other thing that's interesting on this one, again, United Airlines, look at the early radio mast, and then look at the cowl rings, the speed rings around the engine. That was an early thing also, just to cover the pistons and the cylinders to get the engine to run cooler. Let's go up in front of the nose there, Bob. You notice a door there. That was where they stowed the luggage on the 247. That opened up, and right almost back to underneath the pilot's windshield was where the suitcases were stored on the 247.
Very interesting. I think we have another picture. And tell us about this plane, Tom. You seem to have a little information on that.
Believe it or not, this was the last Boeing 247 that was flying. They rescued it from somewhere in kind of a ghost airport. Some pilot had flown in, and he was an airline pilot, and he was in at this little airport for a charter, and he happened to look over there and saw it, and you notice it looks quite derelict. Actually, this is after they had fixed it up so they could fly it. It was really derelict before that. But he bought it. He bought the airplane for $20,000 and decided he was going to have a early airliner, and his wife said no. And you'll notice that it was so early that they hadn't even modified the window on this. So the front windshield, I should say. So this just kept in its original shape, so to speak. And he flew it up to Seattle to see what Boeing would say, because obviously they had the plans and so on. And the end result was he was looking at least to get it airworthy. Airworthy, that he could haul people in it and that it would meet all the current safety standards that were applicable. He would be looking at a minimum of $100,000. So basically what he ended up doing, he ended up donating it to Boeing. And if you go to the Museum of Flight today up in Seattle, it is hanging in the Museum of Flight in United Airlines colors. And we'll have a color shot of that coming up pretty quick.
And so they did fix this windshield. You're saying that they did modify that?
They did modify it on the one that they had there. Yeah, this was the original unmodified one, and I'd assume they probably flew it until it got so bad, and then because they used it in daily work, they never had time to get it overhauled because they needed the passenger carrying capacity of the airplane. So when it was done, they just wheeled it off to the side someplace, and it just became a hangar queen.
Okay, Tom, thanks. I'm going to just hit your pause button, and we're going to come back with our next episode. But I'd like to point out the Bismarck Air Museum Foundation is trying to capture and restore the pictured building here, hangar number 5 at the Bismarck Airport. Log on to our website at bismarckairmuseum.org. Check us out on Facebook. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. I'd also ask that you give us a donation. This can be done through PayPal on bismarckairmuseum.org. I'd like to credit mostly Wikipedia for our photos today. Once again, I'd like to thank Tom for helping us understand these iconic photos.